All right, boys and girls, getting into day 2. So you finished 486, which was giving us an idea of how Greg got the idea to create his comic books. It was his love of comic books that had first gotten Greg interested in drawing. Comics had led Greg to books like How to Draw Comic Book Villains, You Can Draw Superheroes, Make Your Own Comic Book Art, and Draw the Monsters We Love to Hate. Back in 3rd grade, Greg had used his own money to buy India ink, dip pens, brushes, and paper at the art supply store. And drawing new comic book characters was one of his favorite things to do when he wasn't earning money. The whole summer before 6th grade, Greg had worked towards the launch of Chunky Comics. From the start, he had felt pretty sure he could come up with a story idea, and he knew he would be able to do the drawings. So right now, I'm realizing not only does Greg like comic books, he likes creating the comic books, but what he likes the most about the whole process is earning the money. And people who make and create things to sell, those are called entrepreneurs. So business people who run their own business are entrepreneurs. So Greg is in the 6th grade and he has his own business. But first he had to deal with a lot of the hows. How does a whole comic book get put together? How big should each be? How was he going to print them? How much would it cost him to make each one? And finally, how much money should he charge for each of his finished comic books, assuming he could actually make some? But one by one, Greg had found the answers. An encyclopedia article about printing books had helped a lot. Pause right here. The encyclopedia, it's like old-fashioned Google. So if Google was to be printed into books, that's an encyclopedia. So it is where people used to go to find answers to questions or to find more information about topics. Encyclopedias are considered outdated now, so that can kind of tell you when our story was written, but that's not going to make our story so old we can't imagine. So let's read it now, thinking about it being like the internet. But one by one, Greg had found the answers. An internet article about printing books had helped a lot. It showed how pages of a book start as one larger sheet of paper and it gets folded in half several times. Each time the sheet is folded, the number of pages is doubled. So Greg took a piece of regular size paper and folded it in half 3 times, the way it showed in the encyclopedia. The one piece of paper turned into a chunky little 16-page book, Chunky Comics. It was so simple. Okay. Right there, do you feel like you could go and make a comic book? I do. I know some of the technology that we have available to us. I know on our school copier where I copy all of your guys' papers, there's an option for me to take a big piece of paper and shrink it down super small so that way I can draw it real detailed on the big piece of paper and then make it small so that way I'm not using as much paper. But that doesn't seem like what Greg did. Sounds to me like he took one piece of paper that had 16 boxes in it and drew his comic book that way. So I'm realizing that that's probably really difficult because if you're folding paper, you have to make sure it's facing the right way. So what your job is going to be, you are going to now read the steps of how Greg created his comic book, ending on page 489, going back into Edsby and submitting your exit ticket.